Yeah, if only it worked. Okay, so hey, my name is Leslie Ruddy at the Marketers Brain Trust, and I'm joined today by Dan Thies, my partner in this little enterprise we call Marketers Brain Trust, and Michelle Chance Sangthong, one of our small business consultants. Actually, kind of really the only small business consultant we have. And so Corey Burke is off doing, as I think he said, client stuffs.
Stuff. So that's more than one stuff. That sounds important.
Yes, and for more than one client, presumably. So anyway.
Well, wouldn't he have said clients stuffs?
That's what I was thinking. Yeah.
I don't know. And then where do you put the apostrophe?
Apostrophe after, yeah. That's,
I know.
we're right there.
Just leave the apostrophes laying on the floor and as a warning to the others.
Must be, yeah, put them on apostrophes on a stick. Yeah. So all right. So it turns out that the email went out, but it was to be determined because, well, we hadn't actually determined it yet. And so if you actually click through and register for this event with a to be determined, and thank you for that study, and we'll actually report the findings of to be determined.
Take that data point to heart.
Yeah.
There are a few people that trust us enough. I'm just going to go with the optimistic view.
Yeah, there we go.
That trust us enough to just show up because we're going to be here.
Hey guys, I just want to point out something. If you'll just go over into the room panel on Webinar Jam. On my side it says not live, but I see that it says live on the other part in the Google Hangout.
That is weird. You're right. Yet another peculiarity.
Okay, let's just ask the good people, are we live?
Open to... Well, you're quite right. I mean, it's kind of a weird... it is kind of a weird thing.
Is it not working? Ah, hey.
Huh.
I got that.
From Stephanie. Why would it be not live? We're live on Hangout.
Okay, I'm voting all my shares that we never use Google Hangouts again for any purpose ever for the next 100 years.
Well, you're
and
up, so
2115, they can get another shot.
In 2015? It is 2015.
Oh, 2115, 100 years from now.
100 years from now.
Like a lease on Hong Kong, except we're sending them there.
Well, we've never had this problem before. That's weird.
Heck. We say that every week. This dumb thing that
that shouldn't happen
before sucks.
I mean, this doesn't even show.
Oh, she says I got it now.
Okay.
And
we don't even show one admin too.
And I see two.
Oh, really? Okay. Well, maybe it's a refresh thing. God, I'm scared to do that.
It still says not live, but she says she's got it now.
Nobody's showing up in the chat.
Hey guys, this is so much fun. Thanks if you're just hanging there and you can't actually see us and we don't know. We're just trying to figure out the beauty of all this. So thank you for hanging with us.
Nice, Michelle.
And if you're watching this in the replay, then you missed all the fun firsthand.
Yeah. Okay, so people will not be able to ask us questions because for the first time ever, I mean, seriously, first time I think ever, it looks like we may have a problem with Webinar Jam instead of Google Hangout. Just saying. Google Hangout seems to be working, but the chat, in Jam does not.
Okay, cool.
So,
all right, guys. So thanks for your patience.
Well,
now on with that show.
Yeah. So Dan, tell us what fantastic surprise presentation you've prepared.
Oh man. Hello.
Yeah.
Hey.
Yeah, we can hear you fine. Dan, go ahead. And Dan's frozen.
Hello.
Yep, we can hear you fine.
Okay, I'm going to turn camera off. I'm going to turn, is there anything else I can turn off? My network connection is experiencing difficulties, says Google.
So is your lighting, but that's another story.
You know.
It may just be power in general.
It really feels safe being over there on the other side of the internet, doesn't it, Rhodey?
Well, apparently, by all actual accounts, it is. Yes.
I bet there are several members of your family that would be willing to cack you in the head given the slightest excuse, and I can give them one.
There you go.
I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me see if I can start the screen share thing to go.
There we go. I need to present you to everybody, too.
Okay, well, you can do that, but let me get the presentation that I'm presenting into presentation mode.
All right. Principles for testing that you better not ignore.
Yeah, because, you know, Leslie, you're well aware of some of the specific cases, but I'm really getting sick and tired of explaining some of the same things over and over and over again. And so I thought what we do is explain some of those things that my hide is so chapped about right now during a brief presentation on the Hangout. And I was hoping we'd be able to take questions about specific cases, but apparently that's not going to happen today, thanks to tech.
Right.
But these are some things that people either don't know or know and just kind of ignore, and at their peril and at their own expense.
Dan.
And so, let's just begin with the first one.
Do it fast.
You're going to either succeed or you're going to fail, but you want to do it fast. And you know, we all get, and it's obvious, and nobody ever argues with me, that if we're going to succeed, we'd like to succeed as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
That is to say, if we think that this is going to be a big winner, we'd like to have a big win happen as fast as possible. But the other side of that is that if you're going to fail, you'd like to have that failure happen as soon as possible so that you can move on to the next test. And in both of these cases, it doesn't call for, well, let's do this test as slowly as possible and budget as little as possible for testing purposes. Can't you optimize without using data? No, actually, you can't. That's called guessing. It could be an educated guess, but it's just a guess, and it is not a test. And so if you're going to test, plan to test with enough traffic and in places where you're going to see enough conversions to reach a conclusion relatively quickly. You're going to run into cases if you test all the time where you have a test that's been running forever.
Yeah.
And whatever your version of forever is, right? If I've been running a test between two different variations of the buy button on my product detail pages for 6 weeks, and there's just no winner in sight, guess what? In that test something else instead. That test is not going to give you a big win, and it may take years before it tells you which one of them is probably slightly better. So what you're looking for here in testing is you're looking for variances, big differences in performance, big swings in big changes in what happens, not just trying to find the winners and losers and answer that question of was this variation or that variation better. If you have any kind of emotional attachment to the variations that you're running, let somebody else run the test. And that test is not going to give you a big win. Well, that's a cool echo. And
sorry, guys.
Okay. And so, obviously, Leslie, when we test, we've been told, I was down at the Which Test 1 conference, and every speaker made a very pointed effort to make sure that they pointed out that you must pick one conversion objective and then design your test to answer the question of what gets you more of that conversion objective. That's great. Go ahead and use that to decide when the test is over, but don't let that tell you what the result of the test was, because any single objective, no matter what you measure, is only telling part of the story. So if you test for click-through rate when you're running ad tests, for example, in AdWords, that doesn't tell you which one actually got a better conversion rate and a actual greater value that you got from the clicks. And so we see this all the time where we might get a better click-through rate on one ad, but a better conversion rate by far on another ad. On the other hand, just testing for conversion rate and value and using that as your only measurement doesn't tell you the whole story either, because it might be great that I've got 3 times the conversion rate, but I've only got 1/10 of the click-through rate. I'm not actually going to probably come out ahead in that equation, but you have to do the math on the whole story, and that's the thing. So when you set your objective, whatever you're going to measure, that's essentially a way to measure to figure out when can I end this test and then do the analysis. It doesn't really tell you what the result of the test was in terms of what you're going to want to turn into action on your site, because so many other things can disagree with whatever you decided to measure. There is no one perfect statistic. And so some tests have clear objectives, right? When we're testing product detail pages, for the most part, we're just trying to figure out which one gets more people to add the products to the cart, right? But you always want to keep an open mind to what the data is telling you, because there might be other data points that make you, well, just slow down and stop. And we'll get a few examples here, but let's talk about the biggest thing here. Figuring out what you're going to use for conversions, because tests need conversions. Test needs conversions so that you can reach a conclusion. And so, for retailers, we'd love for you to be able to run every test based on transactions and the actual number of dollars in transaction sizes. But unless you have a high volume of transactions going through the pages that you're testing, or going through, the ad campaigns and channels that you're testing the traffic from, you might not be able to actually draw conclusive conclusions based on transactions and transaction conversion rates. The same thing with leads, right? You might be able to measure the number of leads that you get, and ideally you'd have some kind of sense of what the value of those leads is, but in a lot of cases, you might run a test and you might have the A variation got you 43 leads and the B variation got you 32 leads, but you really want to wait a few weeks to see what happens when people start talking to those leads, because the 32 might turn into 20 lifetime customers and the 40 might turn into 3. You don't really know until you know, but the test needs a conversion. So at some point, we're going to say that this variation got us more leads than that variation, and we're statistically confident that that's so, and then we're going to end the test. And so what we really want to do is find a conversion metric to use that lets us end the test at some point and not let the test run forever. But those are not necessarily the answer. I mean, all of these testing tools, back in the day, Google Website Optimizer, all the ones that we used to use, we used to go through all kinds of hoops to make sure that we got the variation that was being shown to people included as a variable that we could track in analytics, because the raw number of conversions is never the final answer to the story. And you want to be able to say, okay, this one got more conversions and we're highly confident of that, but guess what? The transaction sizes were half as much. So it turns out a 50% off coupon will increase your conversion rate, but you're not actually any happier as a result of having done it. Now, there are other things that you can use to help you figure out what was good when you don't get a conclusive conversion. One of the things that we use all the time is what are called micro-conversions. And so for a retailer, for example, we might measure from a product listing page, what we used to call the category pages before the language police told me that I couldn't call it a category page anymore. But the product listing pages, they have lots of products on them. What's the conversion? Well, get them to go click and go look at a product detail page, right? So we measure those, and that becomes the conversion that we use to test the variations and come to a conclusion on when the test is ready to be assessed. Or on a product detail page, it's going to be something like add to cart. So we might not be able to measure complete checkouts, because you might have one of those typical e-commerce checkouts that loses 80 to 90% of people after they've hit add to cart, which, by the way, is not necessarily an intent to buy, but often just an intent to think about it later. And then when you can't get a good answer based on conversions, you can often get a hint based on things like the number of pages per session and the amount of time per session. In fact, in some cases, with some kinds of sites and some things that we test, the conversion objective, what we're trying to measure, is more. We want to get more pages per session. So, for example, if we're testing on a blog or a news site and we want to figure out which of these related posts widgets or related story widgets at the bottom of our story actually works better for us? Well, most of the time we're going to be measuring that based on the number of pages or the time per session, and not just what percentage of people click on one of the items in that widget. And of course, Leslie, I don't remember how many people we've told this in the last week, but if you can't measure, we can't run tests. And if you won't let us generate traffic, we also cannot really run any tests.
We can, but it'll be like so slow that you won't be able to afford to wait.
Yeah, and unfortunately the traffic that you're then testing against is whoever randomly ended up on your website through who knows how. And you'd really like for any kind of test to have a consistent kind of traffic from the same source. And oh, by the way, Leslie, that reminds me of a test that well, being aware of where the traffic came from would have made all the difference in what you thought about the test. So we all saw it, because I know you saw it. I'm pretty sure you saw it, Michelle. The one where they tested removing the privacy policy statement from an email opt-in form. So they had an email opt-in form that said, we hate spam as much as you do, but we won't spam you and stuff like that. And they tested a version that didn't. And wow, look, taking the privacy policy link and all that stuff off of there increased our conversion rate. Well, if you did that with an AdWords or Facebook landing page, you might also have your account shut down, because it violates both of their terms. But the funny thing that I found out about that test when I was down there in Austin was that the source of that traffic was, Leslie, any guesses which source of traffic would completely skew the results of that the most? I'll give Leslie the first guess here. Where did that traffic come from, do you think?
So wait a minute. So the traffic that
was used to test whether removing the privacy policy disclaimer from an email opt-in form would improve conversion on that email opt-in form.
Gee, I'm going to go ahead with email.
Yes, that's right. They were already opted in. And so it was just, joining a campaign. So anyway, but
people are so cute.
It is seriously adorable as the Southern.
Before you go roll that thing out, be aware that well, they didn't say anything other than what they said, though, and people take a crumb and try to make it into a cookie all the time. But so they with their audience, they actually did get more people to opt into a new campaign, or give them an email address again to download a white paper when they removed the privacy policy disclaimer. But they didn't really need one because it was an email landing page. So anyway, there's that, and you'll find that a lot of tests that you see written up online are tests that were run because of the sake of convenience, run off of email traffic, and that can very much, before you just go clone what they did and say that it's good, it's okay to run a test based on what they did and say, I'd like to see what the result is for me, but just be aware that you do need to understand the context of where the traffic came from. Search traffic behaves differently than email traffic, as an example.
Okay. I mean, if that wasn't the case, why would any of us use email? Right? I mean, come on.
Well, and if that wasn't the case, why would any of us use search?
Exactly, right?
So the one law that I was able to get two of the speakers at the show to agree with me on this and make it their new law, which is that there are 7 days in the week, and that your results will vary by day of the week, and so that you should plan for every test that you run to take some multiple of 7 days. And if you've got a holiday in the middle of it, well, guess what? You probably should just hold off on that test. So if you're in the United States and you just ran a 7-day test that included Memorial Day weekend, try again next week.
All bets are off. Yeah.
Because this affects all of us. I mean, when I'm doing analysis on AdWords campaigns in a lot of markets that we deal with, I have to go 2 weeks after Valentine's Day. I have to go 2 weeks after Tax Day. I have to go 2 weeks after New Year's Day, or whatever, before I can start to look at the data as a consistent week-to-week progression of data, because there's just weird stuff that happens in different markets around those things, and so you've got to bear in mind that holidays are a factor, but 7 days at a time, because there will be variances by day of the week.
In fact, I mean, you
And
can go ahead
one
and
of
add
the
you can go ahead and add Dennis to the list of people who agree, because in convert.com, the standard termination criteria is a certain level of confidence over 7 days.
yeah,
Not
and that would, an and, right? But
and sorry, and not or, yeah, right.
yeah, so but it's funny, and it's amazing how much of a competitive edge understanding this still gives you, because this should, I mean, I thought this was obvious, but it's not. I mean, I again, down at the testing conference, I raised the question with a couple of folks, because it's always fun to get statistics people to try and answer a question like this and give you a straight answer, because the right answer is that there isn't a straight answer. But hey, we ran this test for 3 weeks. It's really too close to call. Why not go ahead and unpack that into 7 different weekday split tests? And so I can look at those 3 consecutive Mondays as the Monday test, and look at the Tuesday test, and see, do I actually have a winner in those? And everybody was like, but then you have to create like 49 different variations of your, and they started getting into, no, just run the test like you run a test, and then make the day of week analysis part of the analysis. You don't actually have to create a Monday control and a Tuesday control and a Wednesday control until you actually find something that performs better on those days.
Yeah, sure.
But yes, definitely run for 7 days. And then when you think you've got a winner, go and look and see, are there certain days of the week where it's actually a loser, and the other variation is the winner, because that will happen all the time. And when that happens, and when there's big significant differences, you really do have to deal with that. I mean, you might really have to come up with some kind of script or something that changes the buy button out on different days of the week, because it's worth that much money to you to do it that way. And we won't digress into all the fun technical ways to do that, because that's the advantage of not having any Q&A, is that no one can ask us that, and cause us to digress into that.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah,
so,
okay, moving on.
So just for fun, let's talk about some things that that everybody out there could grab hold of and test, because a lot of the time, you'll test stuff, and like testing a yellow versus a green add to cart button, or a red versus a blue, and whatever. And guess what? A lot of the times that doesn't make a darn bit of difference in the big picture. Your conversion rate remains at 0.8%, and you're statistically confident that it's not getting better if you keep testing the color of the buy button. Now, that's not always the case, right? Sometimes testing different buy button wording, different colors and stuff like that. But if you're stuck at that point where I've tested everything that could possibly be tested, here are some things that you probably have not tested yet. The first thing that you can test is text sizes, especially the body text. That is to say, the small text, the stuff that you complain that your customers never read, but you also make it too small for them to read it. 80% of the tests that I've run, bigger wins. And so what we've kind of gotten into the habit of doing over the years is just keep testing bigger until our conversion metrics stop improving from making it bigger. And basically, it's the last test we run that I've got, and carry on and start testing other things. That is something that very frequently yields a ridiculously large improvement in conversion, even though it seems like such a small thing. But the reason why is because it is such a small thing and nobody can read it. And I really don't care if your eyes are offended by slightly larger text. You're not building your site for you. Run the damn test. There. How about that, Leslie?
I totally agree. I mean, it's particularly. I mean, let's face it. Everybody is selling to boomers. If you, unless you're, I don't know, have a bar for underage youth or whatever. But most of us are selling to the highest spending portion of the population, and those are people who need eyeglasses. By the way, in case you didn't get the memo. And so, small text.
And it really doesn't matter what kind of glasses they use, whether they're they just use reading glasses, because the thing is, as you get older, the ability of your eye to like flex that lens and focus goes away, and so it really doesn't matter how good your vision is. Bigger text is better.
Yep.
And at some point, right, it's going to get too big. But one of the things I see people do all the time is testing bigger headlines, which in many cases push, the actual important stuff farther down the page and things like that.
Yep.
Had somebody send me a landing page last week that was like 4-foot tall letters, and the video that was supposed to be the main feature of the landing page was halfway down below the fold on a 960 pixel high monitor, and that was just a little bit too much on the headline, especially when the headline is repeated in the first frame of the video. And so I said, why don't we get rid of that headline and test that? And I don't know what the status of that test is, but I'm hoping that it's being tested that way. Page templates are another thing that you can test, and this is something that is a little bit more work to set up, sort of, but not nearly as much work as it used to be to set up. I mean, Leslie, you run page template tests with Convert.com all the time, right?
Yeah, and you just have to be pretty decent at CSS and JavaScript. That's a really hireable talent. If you don't have it yourself, you can really just literally take the page, print it out, start scribbling on it, scan it and hand it off to a developer and say, here, make it look like this. And with Convert.com, you can make truly arbitrary changes. I mean, you could wipe out the whole page and put up a video of porn if you wanted to. Don't do that, okay? But I'm saying that with Convert.com, you can make pretty much any A/B test you want, as long as you're willing to jump down into CSS and JavaScript.
Or hire someone who spends their day mucking around in that stuff anyway. But testing page templates. So we've got a page template test that we're running for a client site right now on the product detail pages, and all it is it's just a more prominent placement of the money back guarantee and the free shipping offer, so that they're much more visible when people are performance. We're going to do another test to figure out where to place those things, because we kind of placed them in the most convenient place, but it might not be the best place. But certainly the hypothesis that people being aware that they're going to get free shipping and that there's a 30-day money-back guarantee will improve conversion is one that was worth testing. Although that's one of those ones that I often just implement as a matter of principle and don't bother testing.
Yeah, we don't have enough. We don't have quite enough conversion on that, by the way, looking at this particular one. But so we're still showing inconclusive because of number of ad cards. But still, if it holds, we're talking about a 30 to 40% increase in conversion rate. So just saying.
Yeah, it's when that's one of those cases where we're trying to ramp up traffic and where you don't necessarily have permission to ramp it up to full fire hose levels just yet. But this test will get us there. And so, testing things like stuff that's in the style sheets, testing different images. We've seen lots of people have really good luck with just testing, different credit card logo treatments and things like that on checkout pages that you might want to let that Diners Club one go out off the list so that you can have bigger Visa and MasterCard logos, because those are the ones that people actually recognize and use the most in most markets. Although if you're dealing with B2B or high value things, you probably want to have some Amex in there first. And then, of course, when we're testing ads and landing pages, understand that those things interact. And so, really, it's unless you're going to do what we call a 2x2 or a quad test, where you've got two ad variations pointing to two different versions of a landing page, even then you're not necessarily going to reach a conclusion the first time that you run a test. So let's say that I've got an A ad and a B ad, and they're both going to the same landing page. Well, the A ad is getting a better click-through rate, but the B ad is getting a better conversion rate. Okay, well, what's the right answer there? I don't know yet, because what I haven't done is try and figure out if there's another landing page that might work better with the A ad. And what we typically find, and it's not something you can completely take to the bank. You have to test it, but it's close to 80% of the time, where if the headline of the ad and the first line of the offer copy in the ad are prominently visible, particularly that first line of the offer copy makes as the headline on the landing page, whereas the first message is delivered on the landing page. When those things match, we tend to see conversion better. So if you've got a new ad that you're testing where that's not the same text as you had in the old ad, then you might not expect the old landing page to convert as well with that new ad. But when you see an ad that does better in click-through and worse in conversion, that tells you that you want to be testing landing pages against that ad next, because you'd like to get the conversion up to where you were doing with the other ad. And if you can do that, now you've got better click-through rate and you win all the way around. And so understand when you're looking at tests that it might not necessarily be the thing that you're looking at and that you think you're testing. That might not be the whole story, particularly with advertising. The ad and the landing page, the offer that you make in the ad, and what you tell people on the landing page interact in a lot of sometimes predictable and sometimes strange ways, but mostly predictable ways. That is to say, if the landing page doesn't match what the ad says, you're not going to do as well as if the landing page does meet the promise that the ad makes. And here's my favorite test, the one that nobody ever runs. And Leslie, I think the site that we were just talking about, we're probably going to be running some kind of a test like this at some point. But when when you rely on images, so if you're selling products, for example, that the images make a big difference, like for example, shoes, expensive furniture, watches, art,
lingerie,
panties, bras, whatever the stuff Leslie wears is called.
Yeah, shirts actually.
Motorcycle leather. Sorry,
that too. Yeah, that too.
Just for riding a bike, anyway.
It's called
chaps. I don't have chaps, but yeah.
Leslie does not have. It doesn't surprise me that Leslie doesn't have chaps.
Anyway.
He's not quite that into the bike, I don't think. But here's the test that nobody ever runs, and actually, I think that that's the one that I lost when I had my crash-o. So I lost the last slide in this, but it doesn't matter. I don't need the last slide in this. Here's the thing: it's from dark to light, and all of a sudden there's light stabbing into it from the monitor. That's painful. It's really easy for you to do that yourself just by looking at a big black square and then a big white square alternately. The white square, when that light hits your eyes, it hurts. Why? Because your pupils dilate when there's less light coming in. And then when the light hits, they've got to slam real quick, and it's like a little bitty muscle cramp in there in your eyes. But that shoots straight back to your brain as a pain signal, and well, one of the websites that throws off more light than just about any of them is Google, because they've gone with the big super weird cool engineers, super white background, right? Very simple, very sparse layout. But the more that you can do to reduce the amount of light that that the monitor throws off in people's faces, without making it impossible for people to read things and stuff like that. Now, don't make it impossible, right? Don't put gray text on a black background and then tell me that it's my fault that your site doesn't convert anymore. But do think about ways that you can stop throwing off quite as much light. For example, if you got a picture of a duck, does the duck need to be on a white background, or could the duck be on a black background? If these things were all by themselves, you can actually see a lot more. If you just looked at it, you could see a lot more of the detail in the duck's foot, and things like that when you're looking at it in. And I'm actually going to see if I can zoom in here and show you what I mean by zooming in. So view, yeah, there's a zoom in here somewhere. Oh, okay, it's like that then. Okay, plus. Okay.
Kill the sidebar.
There we go. So let's just go ahead and scroll on over here and look at that duck's beautiful mug.
That's one beautiful duck. Dan, that's great.
But you can see, like, there's little details you can see around, like he might be drooling or something like that.
He might be.
And if you roll over here and go look at the one with the all white background, you literally can't see as much because there's so much light that your pupils slam shut and you are not taking in as much light. So you're simply not taking in as much information and detail of the image. In fact, I literally just can't look at this, so I'm going to stop looking at it. I'm going to stop making everybody else look at it too, because, well, it's wrong to torture people. But you know, every website has some space that's being used that's full of white, almost always, right? It might be just the right and left-hand sides. We had one site where we got a nice bump in conversion simply by testing background colors outside of what was at that time we were using a fixed width layout. Boy, don't you miss those days, Leslie, when you could get away with a fixed width layout? Mm. Oh, those were good times. But you know, just by darkening the background outside of the frame where we were actually trying to get people to read, the same thing. So you might have images are gonna pop, and people are going to be able to see your stuff better if you can throw less light off the monitor and allow the light that comes out to be your image. And so finding places where you can darken, either darken, right? So it might be that you've got, you know, a nav bar. Could that nav bar be black with white text or white with black text? It could be either one. Switching it from black text with a white background to white text with a black background, you might need to make a few typography changes, but that's going to cause the monitor to throw off less light. And you can also use these effects to actually call the eye to sections that you want people to look at. And so it's a test that hardly anybody ever runs, but in general, you should expect, unless it does something weird to design or makes it the thing just look weird, that darkening the monitor light output is going to yield improvements in conversion up to a point. Obviously, if you make it completely fade to black and there's nothing visible to anyone, then that's some kind of weird existential art project and not a website anymore.
Yeah, and so Dan, there's a couple interesting things probably most people don't know about, dealing with the physiology of light and pupil dilation. And so you probably heard, like from some body language book or something, right, that if somebody is really into you, their eyes dilate, and if they're not, their pupils their pupils get a lot smaller. And this is, I mean, it's a big enough effect that if you train yourself, you can actually see it happen. You can actually tell whether, given the ambient lighting, whether a person's pupils are small or large, by comparison to other people. Well, it turns out.
This assumes they're not on meth, right?
Well, that's true. Yeah, you have to calibrate to their current drug profile. And so, but what's interesting about that is it causing that also has a tendency to create the internal emotional state as well. So if I don't like something, my pupils retract. So whereas if I really like something, they dilate. The opposite is also true. If you blast a whole bunch of light at me, I have a feeling in the lizard brain that this is a bad thing. So why is it the restaurants always have dim lighting, bars even dimmer than that? We're talking about having atmosphere, at a venue, right? It's because people are more accustomed to stay longer and feel better and like what they see when the light is dim. It's the stupidest thing in the world. Well, not the stupidest thing, but it's right down there where you're not aware of the underlying physiology of the lizard brain that's just kind of ruling your world, right? So one of the ways to get to this, instead of doing, oh, well, I'm going to do a black background with white text, don't do that, because the problem there is that white light on the
now that white text is throwing light directly into your retina,
and it's really sharp. It's kind of like glittering stars or something, right? I mean, it's horrible. It's very, very hard on the eyes. It's one of the worst things you could do. However, look at why so-called complex or busy layouts win over so-called plain layouts, like Google is famous for. And that it works for Google because they don't want you to stick around on the page. They want you to click something. Duh, right? And so it probably is the right thing to do on Google. They don't want you to stick around. But on your blog, you want them to stick around. And so use grays, use lots of stuff. Look at an Amazon page. It starts out as white, well, kind of, right? But then the menu bar, as Dan pointed out, right, is black. The stuff above it is kind of a light grayish green background, and then they always have some big stripe that's a different color. This, right now is saying have diploma will travel, Kindle Paperwhite for 119. And then down that, you almost can't find white because there's so many product choices pushed at you, which, by the way, more often than not, are not white. So, the end result is on these so-called busy layouts, you really cut down dramatically the amount of light that's pouring out of the monitor. So just bear that in mind. If you're got a really sparse layout and you think it's really quote-unquote clean, it's probably way too bright, and it's probably reducing your conversion rates dramatically. So that's what I'd say about that. So, yeah.
Since Dan's not presenting at the moment, it's still showing just Dan when you're talking.
Oh yeah. I'm sorry. Yeah, I forgot that. I mean, why that just can't be. Somebody should make that automagic. I don't know.
It should just be automagic. Up.
Yeah, yeah.
I found you up here, Leslie.
Nice.
Oh, thanks.
Just as an example of, what you're talking about there is you look at the top here, right? There's a reason why they've got some of this stuff that's not throwing light off. And I think Amazon could do a lot better. But even here, you see that they've taken and just made this a slight shade of gray as opposed to pure white, and that lets them also offset different sections. But it makes a big difference in how long you're willing to stick around, particularly if you're switching from light to dark. That is to say, if my site throws off less light than the place I came from, I got a lot better chance. Did you know that this is where you measure for chaps, Leslie? Right around the thigh there. Anyway.
I did not know that, Dan.
Okay,
so thanks for pointing that out. Yeah.
Important thing to learn in this age of learning. So it doesn't look like we can actually take any questions from our room because we can't talk to our room.
Right. I even tried to sneak in as an attendee, and it won't let me ask questions in the room itself where no one can reply. So yes, but no, we couldn't even relay them today, guys. Sorry.
Well, at least on the good news though is that Webinar Jam actually does have support that answers email.
Yes, they do, and so, we know the people that work there.
Yes.
So we can ask them in other places if they somehow don't get our emails.
Exactly. So yeah, I'll figure out how we ended up with the first time ever, right, a bug in Webinar Jam, or at least activating a bug in Webinar Jam.
We got the Google Hangout running in time, no problem. It just ran. Everything just worked, and then Webinar Jam won't let us talk. Yes.
Right. Yeah. But anyway, so I mean, hopefully, for those of you who are not split testing, so let's sum up, right? So if you're not split testing, so ask yourself this question: What are the chances? Like, what's the probability that you got the perfect converting pages on the first try?
Probably about 90%.
I'm not going to go with that, Dan. 90% chance you didn't, right? And so that's the first thing, is you got to believe that if you are not split testing, have not been split testing like a maniac, then high likelihood that you don't have the best converting site, which means...
Let's just go with certainty, Leslie.
All right, we can round off to certainty, sure. The other thing is that means that every single bit of traffic development you do is underperforming what it could do. So like whatever you're spending on AdWords, whatever you're spending on SEO, whatever you're spending on Facebook, right? Take that total amount. It's like, right. I need more traffic. Oh, that's good. More traffic is good. I mean, we're all about that. But wait a minute. Every one of those visitors is underperforming relative to what it could be,
right,
if you actually tested. Think about that. Yeah.
It's kind of like throwing money away, isn't it, Leslie?
It's almost throwing money away, except when you throw money away, you know how much you threw away. This is worse. You have no idea.
This is just like there's a leak in the bucket of an unknown size, and until you start measuring what goes in and out of the bucket and testing bucket performance, you're just bucketed.
Something like that, yeah. So that's a couple things. The other thing is, bear in mind that the higher your conversion rate is, so whatever you're doing about increasing conversion, it means that now you can afford to buy more traffic and use more different traffic sources. Conversion, CRO, conversion rate optimization, is the multiplier on everything. It makes everything work better.
Well, and obviously I deal with paid traffic almost exclusively at this time, Leslie. I mean, I'm dealing with AdWords, right? We're dealing with Facebook traffic, and we run into this all the time where we've either got a new client or a client that's thinking about starting AdWords, and we got to do the math with them and say, okay, well, here's what we think we can do in terms of how much it's going to cost to generate traffic. If it converts at this rate, then you break even. If your conversion rate is below that, then we've got to improve that to get you above break even. We can't optimize AdWords to not be an auction.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's like, well,
because it is an auction for traffic, right? We are bidding for who gets that click, and it's going to cost us something. And so when we bid less, we get less impressions and we get less clicks because our ads get moved farther down. But we can only afford to bid what we can afford to bid, and most of the time it's kind of either a binary decision, right? We can either afford this based on what your business can afford to invest in traffic, or we can't. But the answer to making those numbers perform better is always to do more testing.
Although, right, yeah, so one of the things we ought to talk about, probably since we've had this discussion recently with a client, is what's the calculus for this, right? So it's like, well, I need to improve conversion, but in order to do that, I need to increase traffic, so I have enough traffic in order to actually do the conversion testing. Right. But in order to increase the traffic, I have to pay more, and I can't afford that, and so I'm stuck. Classic catch-22.
Yeah, and it's the problem is you've got to really figure out how close to cash flow can I go. I mean, how close to break even can I run this to get to profitability? And I mean absolute, like, break even, ignoring your fixed costs. Break even just on what the actual variable cost element is per transaction or per lead or whatever, because otherwise you're going to be able to test your way to improvement. It's just a matter of how fast can you test your way to improvement, and how long do you wait to get there? And you can literally test too slowly to ever get there, because you're not the only one in the market and you're not the only one testing.
Indeed. Well, in fact, I'd go even, depending on where you are and the size of the business and the market you're in, you may have to use the Jeff Bezos strategy. It may not be about, well, how close to break even can I go? Can I have a cost of sales that equals my gross profit margin? That would be going all the way to the edge, right? So that means you're absolutely not covering any fixed costs, G&A, nothing, right? Yeah. Well, okay, that's actually not the worst case scenario, guys. That's bad. That means you have to live on air. It means you obviously are not taking salaries in the business. You're paying a bunch of things that are coming from somewhere else in order to do this. That's still not the worst case. The worst case scenario is something like Amazon, where literally Jeff tremendously overpaid. I mean, tremendously overpaid for new clients in the early days, because he had a belief that once he reached a certain critical mass, there was going to be some threshold where the thing would take off. Now, he won that wager, right? And won big, right?
Yeah.
But the market was pretty split of whether that was going to work or not. In some markets, it's a little bit easier. I mean, he was like essentially inventing a new business category, business model, right? So let's set that aside for a moment. Some business you go into, you don't have to invent the model. All you do is you have to find that unserved, underserved niche, and then go buy it away, from the marketplace. There are lots of examples of this throughout history of business. I mean, the one that worked extraordinarily well is how the Japanese, industry basically bought the memory semiconductor industry from Americans. It was during a market downturn, and so the American companies pulled back in production. They went for austerity measures. So we know
Sure, you can have my factory and all my equipment, even though it takes 5 years to build a new factory after I don't have one.
Yeah, pretty much. And so the Japanese did what the industry rags in the United States labeled as dumping. That is to say, they went to increase market share by going after very low pricing strategies. So they were
which actually increased the size of the market substantially.
That's true too.
Made the math work.
It did. It did, although it never worked for the Japanese at that price point, and they knew it wasn't going to work. The point is that they bought market share. Well, you may have to do that, and depending on the situation, the market you get into. The calculus of how you enter a market against entrenched competitors, it's going to differ. And so you may have to go even further than cost of sales equal gross profit margin. If that's the case, just realize you have to do it bankrolled. That's the only way to do that. So.
Well, and so guys, I have a question for you both, or whoever would like to chime in. So if a client or if a person trying to figure out this testing, right, and they need to get creative with the testing, any onesie, twosie tips, you could say, hey, like I had one client who really ultimately the thing they wanted someone to call, but they're not there 24 hours a day. So I said, we probably shouldn't be running your ads overnight. We should be running your ads only when you're open.
Yes.
And that's kind of an obvious one, right? But any other thoughts or tips for people? They say, I don't have very much to bankroll this. How can I be as efficient as possible? And where could I just do some quick strategies that could help them get through that testing period? Any thoughts on that?
I'll give you a couple that I kind of use as rules of thumb with AdWords. And sometimes, we've got clients that are trying to break into a very large, high-volume market. And, obviously having, skill it gives you a little bit of an advantage. And this is one of the cases where sometimes I won't run a 7-day test. What I'll do is I'll say, let's look at analytics, let's look at what day you make the most sales, and that's the day that we're going to run ads. And we're going to be completely out of the auction the other 6 days of the week, but we're going to run ads during the peak hours on that day, and we're going to bid to the top of the page. And we're going to keep running ads at the top of the page until the ads at the top of the page don't cost as much to run because they get cheaper as we improve our click-through rate and all that stuff. And that's going to be the channel of traffic that we optimize for. So what we're going to try and do is, with testing on your landing pages or whatever, is we're trying to make the thing perform at its best when the customers are clearly the most ready to buy. And that allows us to establish a beachhead on some pretty prime beach real estate rather than trying to establish a beachhead somewhere down in Baja. We can land right there in La Jolla and just grab a nice prime beachfront home and defend that. And it's a much better place to be. I mean, if you have to, if you're going to be in a fight for market share, you'd much rather be standing in the most profitable part, fighting people off than standing off on the edges where you weren't making any money anyway.
And that's almost the paid auction. That's almost the AdWords auction version of UTE, right? Go after your most narrowest defined, highest performing segment first.
Yeah, and UTE is a principle. I mean, the universal traffic it's a principle that all these principles are not just about Facebook or just about LinkedIn or just about Twitter or whatever. You can apply it anywhere you go. You can look at your email list, right? And we've done segmentation of our email list where we don't mail everything to everybody because that would be less effective than mailing targeted offers to smaller groups of people, and we can even have multiple offers out in the market at the same time. But aside from the people that sign up for our list with 9 different email addresses, sorry, Leslie.
Which happens, yes.
Which seems to happen.
Small inside joke, guys. Small inside joke. But
no, it's somebody on hearing me right now has at least 2 or 3 email addresses in our database associated with them, and they do it because they don't want to miss on any of our promotions. Okay, that's fine. But the segmenting on AdWords. I mean, we've got one client where we've got a very, very the high volume search term in their market, and we were able to make it go on a basis of highly optimistic. We could say you might not be losing too much money to buy market share on this very generic search term. But what we did was we acquired some data from the customer on where their transactions had taken place. Michelle did a nice analysis to break down which zip codes were generating the highest number of transactions. So we created a campaign that just hits those zip codes with that generic search term, and now I don't have to say that it's arguably better than break-even. I can simply say that it is better than break-even. Now that's, we're only targeting 11% of the zip codes in the country, or 8.5% or something like that, of the people, depending on which way you want to slice and dice it. But we're targeting the people in the places where the price of this product, relative to every other product in the market, we're 3 to 7 to 10 times more than I think people are necessarily expecting in a lot of cases to pay. But you're also getting the very, very bestest thing. And so, when we target the right areas where the people that have, the disposable income and the means to purchase it, right? It's what the guys say about the Jag. If you have the means, I highly recommend it.
Right. Yes.
And so when you're selling stuff like that, simply doing a geographic breakdown on AdWords or on Facebook, targeting to the places where the money is, layered on top of whatever else you're doing to target people, it's not guaranteed to make a difference in performance that's enough to make a difference, but it's almost certain to make a difference in performance in a positive direction, unless, of course, you're bidding against other people who have done the same analysis and they're willing to pay more to reach those same people. Most of the time in AdWords, even in like super high volume markets where you'd think, oh my gosh, mortgage lead people ought to know better than this by now. Maybe a few of them, but most of the time, no, not so much. Most of the time, they're just blindly doing the same damn thing 7 days, or just lowering their bids on Sundays because Sundays are bad, and not even trying to test better ads for Sundays or anything like that. Anyway,
I think those are a couple of really good tips. I mean, one of the things I would say in response to Michelle's question is, first of all, is that most people don't even have their analytics right. And so, I mean, if you're not measuring, you can't control, right? So that's the first thing, is to look for analytics, just in order to do kind of what Dan was talking about. You can't know what your best day of the week is unless you're actually measuring correctly.
And if you need to hire you some help to get that analytics scene fixed up, you can email your pal Leslie.
Yeah, just mail me Leslie Marcus Brain Trust, and we'll see what we can do. But
help you get that figured out.
Yeah, because I mean, that's the first thing, is go find those bright spots, go find those harbors where you can actually establish that beachhead. And so in order to do that, you have to have analytics that's decent. And then you have to know how to use it, by the way. And so, go look for day of week, effects and stuff like that, which, I think last time I asked you this, Dan, you confirmed that, I've never found a client where a day of week effect couldn't actually, get them something.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes there aren't enough conversions happening for us to take advantage of it, but the effects are always there. The variances are always there. And certainly you can, if you don't have enough data to make a decision based on data, you can make a decision based on principle, right? That, okay, what day of the week do I make the most sales? If I don't make any sales at all because I'm just starting, here's a tip. Call your competitors, talk to the customer service people, and get them to tell you all of the information that your competitor doesn't want you to know. We did this with a friend of ours, where we were able to get within a few dollars of their average order size, which was significantly higher than the industry average, by the way. But we were able to get, just by calling the reps and say, how much do people usually spend on this stuff? Because should I spend $500? Should I spend $50? And they would give you a number, and you get a few of those from talking to a few different reps, and sure enough, we were very close to the right number. What day is your busiest day of the week? Is there a particular day when you're really busy and I shouldn't, try and call back if I have questions? Oh, well, you can call us anytime, but Tuesdays are usually the busiest. No, thank you very much.
Yeah, right.
Thank you for helping me as a customer. And social engineering is.
Yeah, that's how Mitkin really did it.
Cheaper than buying data is to just call a few competitors and ask them.
Yeah.
There's so many things, right? If you're worried about the quality of the leads because there's some factor that might vary, call somebody that's buying leads and ask them, hey, we noticed you're offering this, and don't you get a lot of people that are, not qualified because of this? You'd be amazed how many times, that's a real problem. Okay, thanks. I won't try that offer. I'll try this other one.
So the other things you can test, and then some of these are principled as opposed to data. It's like, if you have your price and then you have a whole bunch of crap and you have buy now, move the buy now next to the price. It's really simple.
Or put the price next to the buy now. The important thing is
whichever.
that those two things should be close together.
Right.
And you could test whether you tell people you have free shipping somewhere near the buy button, or you tell them through some convoluted process after they give you a zip code, and then you reveal that the shipping is free. But on the other hand, just removing unnecessary and stupid steps from your checkout process for retailers is something that usually is pretty successful. And a lot of lead generators also, I think that there's things that you can do on principle. Like if all I need to follow up with you is an email address, and what I'm going to try and do afterwards is get you to set an appointment on my calendar, I can get your email address and send you to the calendar, and then when you're filling out your appointment on the calendar, the details on the calendar appointment could have everything, like your shoe size and your children's names and all that stuff, and you've already gotten past the wall of trust, and now you're just filling all that stuff in. So doing a two-step form, if you have a lot of information you need rather than a one-step form, in a lot of cases you'll see one, better quality leads, and two, more leads actually complete.
Indeed.
Cool. Great tips, guys. Thank you.
Yeah, and that's lead generation. I mean, the order in which you ask questions and how many questions you ask and all that. And we did a webinar. We did a hangout about this last year.
I think so. We talked about the form. We talked about the forms and keeping the forms really simple and stuff. And I know even for our retail business, I learned to ask questions, and I asked the questions because I was fairly naive, but I wasn't afraid to look stupid. And so that's always good, and that actually caused us to realize that we didn't sell money clips. We actually sold groomsmen's gifts, and they buy 6 of those instead of 1 money clip. And so it became a much better business by I literally called a customer and said, "Hey, why'd you buy 6?"
Well,
and they told me.
We like it when people buy 6, but why did you do that?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I was just I was very sincere with him. I said, "I want to make sure your order's right. Is this right? Do you mind me asking why did you buy 6?" And he said, "They were for my groomsmen." And I was like, "Oh."
Oh.
But it's just that simple, right?
For those of you who have not read, Ray Kroc's biography, that's how he discovered the McDonald's brothers.
Yeah.
That's exactly the story. In fact, it happened to be number 6 too, which is
nice.
Some deep meaning in the universe there, maybe.
Maybe.
But, yeah, I mean, literally. I mean, it's like these guys in some unknown place named San Mateo, California, bought 6 of these mixing machines that Ray was selling. And he was like, 6? Who the hell are these guys? And he called them up.
No restaurant needs 6 mixing machines.
Particularly one that had no indoor dining.
Right.
Leslie, if you're ever in Seattle around a weekend, pop by a Dick's Drive-In on a Friday night. No indoor dining. There are like 3 price points. It's $1, $2, and $3, and you can get like a cheeseburger, fries, a double cheeseburger, a triple cheeseburger, a shake. But it's all like there's no coin involved ever, and it's just they've got piles of cheeseburgers and shakes just lined up, flying out the window. And I've seen the amount that those guys drop in a bank on a Monday. Holy cow!
Yeah.
Well, we got to work on people's accounts all month to do what they do on Friday and Saturday night, just selling cheeseburgers. Man, simplicity is pretty cool if you can make the math work behind it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Sonic Drive-In down here. A little more complex menu maybe, but yeah.
Very complex menu. They've got like 63 million kinds of milkshake.
There's that. That's right. True. All right. Well, that's excellent.
Cool.
It's good stuff there. I mean, if everybody actually did the stuff that Dan, you presented there, and that we talked about afterwards, I mean, it's not unusual at all to find like literally 30+%. I mean, when one of our clients, real honest to God, it was already technically kind of a 1-page checkout, sort of 1.5-page checkout, and there's only one item you could possibly add into the cart. He has only one product. There's some variations in the product, but literally that form, that checkout form, went from a 10% conversion to a 13% conversion. Now we didn't test it. We did principled changes, and you can't always do that safely. So if you're doing this at home, you might ought to consider split testing, but point is, in this particular case, we didn't really have the option to split test exact because of the underlying technology. And so we went from a 10% to a 13%. And we know of some things beyond that. For example, removing a discount coupon 100% of the time. I don't know, Dan, if you have any exceptions to this, but I've never seen a case where we're removing a place to say, hey, if you have a discount coupon, add it here. You might as well just add the little link that says, or go search Google for it now.
Yeah.
And, and forget about coming back to complete your order, because that's what actually happens half the time.
Well, I think I saw someone one time just even put in use this coupon code for 5% immediately, right? And just give it to them right on. If you can't get rid of the coupon code, but you can give them some text, just give them 5% and just let them check out instead of having to go search for them.
I can always get rid of that damn field.
Yeah. Well, you're technically savvy. Not everyone. You would think that someone could not take it away and add it or what have you, but it is an interesting thing.
Yeah, I mean, all 6 changes that we did to that cart in order to grow because bear in mind, it's 3%. No, it's 30%.
No, it's 30%. It's huge. It's huge. Yeah, that's
the 30% increase in this business, right?
Yeah.
It made AdWords from a break-even proposition to something where we can say, well, okay, we're making money at this. Right. I should spend more.
Well, it takes a $1 million business to being a $1.3 million or whatever that it's not a plus. You're up. Yeah, that's always funny to have people go.
Yeah, it's 3%. Yeah, and every single one of those changes, by the way, the cart vendor said, no, you can't do that. Oh yeah, I can.
They did not fear your JavaScript powers nearly enough.
Well, that's just it. I mean, if
they don't call you the Dark Lord for nothing.
Right. Yeah, I haven't done that in a while, but still. So it'll bring back the music, I guess. But one of the things we, if here's a simple question, for your cart vendor, can I add JavaScript to the page? That's question 1. Question 2, you can ask these in any order, doesn't matter. Can I modify the CSS? If the questions to those two answers to those 2 questions are yes, even qualifiedly yes. Yeah, well, you can do this, you can't do that. Okay, that's fine. Whatever. I can always get around those 2. So if you can add CSS and JavaScript to those order pages, you can do anything. So it's just about having the mad skills to do it and the willingness to learn. Yeah. All right.
So that's what you sang to them, that song, anything you can do, I can do better. Is that how you handle those cart vendors?
I bet Leslie did not sing at all.
I did not sing at all. I just nodded and smiled and said, yeah, I'll just handle that.
Okay.
That was one of those times of day when he hasn't had enough vodka to start singing.
Exactly.
It takes a lot.
Yeah, it takes a lot. Because I have to not remember the experience.
Because it was only 8 or 9 a.m. then. Okay. I got
yeah, of course, right. Sure, come on.
It wasn't noon. Come on.
Yeah, I won't start drinking seriously until at least 10 to 30 most days. All right, so let's wrap that up on that note.
Yeah.
So, very good. And so now next week, hopefully, because it's not like a 3-day weekend we have to go through and all that kind of stuff, right? So hopefully we have a more thought-provoking title than To Be Determined. I mean, thanks a lot for Stephanie for at least mailing something, because we were all like doing other stuff, but hey, we'll come up with something to entertain you all, and hopefully even a way for you to ask questions next time, by the way. And so until then, until next Tuesday, when hopefully all of tech will work at the same time, and we will actually have a topic published in advance.
And it'll be June already.
It will be, in fact, June already, like beginning of summer. And so thanks, everybody, for hanging in there, all of you who are actually on. It's really hard for us to tell because Jan's not telling us.
Yeah.
But thanks a lot for playing along, and we'll see you next week. Thanks.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good night.
Ta-ta.